Hello, my name is Simonize, and welcome to another Simonize Guide video. Today, we're talking about a very hot topic, which is shadow resistance for Black Temple, specifically the Mother Shahraz boss. First question is, do you need shadow resistance for the Black Temple? And actually, the answer is no. There's already been a guild on the PTR that has killed Mother Shahraz without using any shadow resistance armor on their players. However, it absolutely makes the boss easier. Guilds with very strong healing, DPS, and tanks will be able to kill Mother Shahraz with less shadow resist than weaker guilds. Many players and many guilds will still prepare shadow resistance gear beforehand just to be sure that their guild's progress is not blocked by this boss. Different guilds will ask their players to prepare different amounts of shadow resistance. And for that reason, I'm not going to recommend a specific gear set for everyone, because everyone's guild is going to have a different shadow resist requirement. Instead, I'll rank items, enchants, and gems by comparing resistance gain to DPS lost compared to your Phase 2 best in slot items. This way, you'll have a ranking of what the most efficient gear swaps are to gain shadow resist. This is the gear set we'll compare shadow resist items to. A pretty standard Phase 2 best in slot list with 4-piece Death Mantle, Bloodseed Brigand's Vest, all the good stuff. We'll additionally assume that you have a Death Mantle chest guard to swap in if needed to maintain your 4-piece Death Mantle bonus, and we'll also look at belt comparisons to Belt of 100 Deaths or to Belt of Deep Shadow, because I know 100 Deaths is a very contested item, and many people have the second best option, the Belt of Deep Shadow. Now let's get right to it and talk about the different items, enchants, and gems you can use to gain shadow resist. And at the top of the list, we have Enchant Cloak Greater Shadow Resistance. This is one of the most efficient things you can do for your character. Resistance gain to DPS lost ratio is very good at 1.23. Some other easy to get and significant items are Medallion of Karabor and the Enchant Helm Glyph of Shadow Warding from the Lower City Reputation. All three of these give you a good chunk of resistance and have a very high ratio of resistance gained to DPS lost. The Broiled Bloodfin food buff is a very good buff to use. Trading out your regular food buff for this 8 resistance buff is a very high ratio thing to do, but it's not going to make up a very large portion of your shadow resistance because it only offers 8 resist. Many of the random enchant greens that you can get for cloak, wrist, ring, or boots are quite efficient trade-offs if you can get a very high roll on the shadow protection. And most good shadow resist armor sets are going to use at least a few of these. Now you could use the Flask of Chromatic Wonder, you'd lose the offensive power of Elixir of Demon Slaying, and you'd lose the smaller shadow resist buff from Gift of Arthas. So your net gain of resistance would be 25, and you'd lose a considerable amount of DPS, so your ratio would be 0.27, which makes it not great, but also not the worst. Then for the Ultra Flash Shadow Reflector is a nice trinket, and how good it is really depends on what you end up unequipping. If you end up unequipping a Warp Spring Coil to equip this trinket, you've got a pretty poor item with a ratio of 0.2, whereas if you're unequipping a Bloodlust Brooch, maybe you're not lucky enough to have both Dragon Spine and Warp Spring Coil at this point. Well, if you're unequipping a Bloodlust Brooch, it's pretty good with a ratio of 0.3. And similarly, for a random enchant green belt of shadow protection, it depends what you're unequipping. If you're unequipping Belt of Deep Shadow to do that, you've got a pretty decent swap at 0.28. But if you're unequipping Belt of 100 Deaths, a much more powerful item, it's a much worse trade-off with a ratio of 0.23. Here are some not as good ideas. Some people have floated the idea that you use your old Tier 4 best in slot gear and you just fill it up with Void Spheres. If you look at all those swaps together, Netherblade Helm, Chest, Wastewalker Shoulders, Gloves, and Skulker's Greaves outfitted with 11 Void Spheres, you gain 44 resistance, but you lose a pretty considerable amount of damage compared to your Phase 2 best in slot armor to get a ratio of only about 0.26. Not the best, but not great either. Other people have noticed that the old classic era Bloodfang Armor Tier 2 set has incidental shadow resist on some of the pieces that also have decent DPS stats on them, but really the DPS stats are not that good, and the resistance is very small. So equipping these Bloodfang pieces is among the worst ideas you can possibly have to gain shadow resistance for Mother Shahraz, with ratios ranging from 0.17 to 0.08. Finally, we get to the crafted gear. This is the raid crafted gear that all requires Heart of Darkness, which is a material that drops in Hyjal and Black Temple. It'll be difficult or impossible to have these items for a day 1 clear, but very likely you'll be able to access them by week 2 or later in the first week. These are all exceptionally good items and will eventually replace anything that you've prepared before Phase 3. The Knight's End Cloak is amazing with a ratio of 0.72, and all of the crafted bracers, feet, legs, and belt have insanely high ratios compared to anything you could have prepared before Phase 3. This is a gear set very similar to what I will likely use in my own raids. I decided I did not want to regem or re-enchant any of my armor that I would be using for other raiding purposes, so that's why I don't have Void Spheres filling out all of my Death Mantle gear. Void Spheres are a very efficient option in terms of gaining shatter resistance, but I don't have extras of these Death Mantle pieces to swap back and forth. So we went with Cog Spinner Goggles of Shadow Protection with the Shatter Resist enchant, Medallion of Karabor, random enchant, Cloak, Bracer, and Boots, with the Shatter Resist enchant on the Cloak, and regular damage enchants on the Bracer and Boots. That gets me to 183 Shatter Resistance from the armor, then I'll get 10 more from Gift of Arthas, 8 more from Broiled Bloodfin, 70 more from the Priest buff, for a total of 271 resistance. If I wanted to gain more resistance with this set, I would swap in a random enchant green belt and up to 2 rings. If I wanted to use less shatter resist, I'd probably drop the boots and bracers first and go back to my regular DPS items. Now, I wasn't able to talk about every single item that's a possible gain of shatter resist in this video, but I do have a complete list like that. And if you're interested in the full list of different shatter resist items and enchants and their DPS loss ratios, you can find that on my Discord, which is linked in the description of the video down below. And please remember, if you found this video helpful, leave a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. It really supports my work and I would appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Good luck in Black Temple and Hyjal. I'm really excited for Phase 3. I hope you are too, and I'll see you around. Thanks for watching The Simonize Show. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Can't wait for more sweet videos? Links are on screen that you can watch right now. Be sure to join the Discord server and pop by on Twitch to catch me live. Links to both are in the video description. Thank you for watching and have a great day.